messenger speeches. They started in early Greek theater, obviously Greek messenger speeches, around 450 BC. We say about because, that was a long time ago, over 2,000 years. So the records were not precise, but dating back different things, we can kind of narrow it down to about then. They were created to deliver a message. Obviously, back then, there was no email or telephone like we have now. So anytime any message had to be delivered, even in real life, it had to be delivered by people on foot. So when we're doing a play, it's going to be the same way. So if there are important characters that need to hear about something that happened far, far away, they would have someone send them a message. And in that message, it would be a lengthy report of something that happened off stage. Usually it's delivered by an anonymous character of low status who has no other role in the play. And we'll talk about why that is later. But the important thing to know is that it's an important offstage event. So we're talking like, there's a battle being fought or a war that's been won or someone's in grave danger. So it's not just, Susie got a haircut. So something very important that happened off stage. So why did we need the messenger speech? Well, in Greek theater, it was the first theaters that there ever were. And so there were certain limitations that we don't necessarily have today that they had to work around to be able to tell their stories the way they wanted to. So one was that the government controlled the theaters at that time. And so they had certain rules. And one of those rules was you can't act out battle scenes on stage that could be, construed as influential. If it's, bashing the government, then people are going to riot. And so they didn't want any battle scenes on stage. Well, Greek theater professionals found loopholes. So you maybe can't act out a battle with actual physical fighting and physical sword fighting, things like that, but you could describe it. You could use your words. And so that was what they did with the messenger speech. They could have very graphic and detailed and descriptive storylines told by the messenger, and it wasn't against the rules. So that was one reason why the messenger speech was so important. Another was that in Greek theater, as we've talked about before, we had that thrust stage built on a hillside that didn't have a whole lot of scenery. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up for a second, a picture of a Greek theater, just to kind of jog your memory. So Greek theaters were these structures that were very, very simplistic. So you had a circular section near the base of the hill, and you had all of this stone seating up the sides of the hill. But then the scenery itself was very limited. If anything, here where my cursor is, they might have had some stone pillars that represented a house, but they would not have had the elaborate sets that we're so used to today. So that's one other reason why we have the Greek messenger speech, because if it's talking about multiple settings, we need the messenger to tell us where they came from. So if the show takes place in Italy, but there's something very important happening in Greece, then you need to be able to describe the different locations that the messenger came from. So those are the two big reasons why. The other benefit of the theater, not a disadvantage necessarily like the two prior, but a benefit to having these messenger speeches, is that it allows your audience to really use their imagination. Like we said, they were limited on technical aspects because there was nothing to compare it to. So we didn't have these pyrotechnic explosions and all sorts of fly systems bringing set pieces in and out of the stage like we're used to seeing now. And so they had to really make the audience kind of get sucked into the story with just their words. It's very similar to if you think about when you go out camping and you guys sit around the fire and you tell ghost stories and you have these descriptive, terrifying ghost stories. A lot of times those are scarier than if you were to like watch a scary movie on TV, because your imagination can come up with way more exciting and vivid images than sometimes we can do with technology. So that was one big benefit to the messenger speech. It allowed your audience to really imagine something, and it's much more than they could portray it on stage. So this is an example of a messenger speech that we wrote over the course of different people helping with it. I'm going to record my performance of it for you to see how that works. And then you will be doing the same thing. You'll be using the same template to create a messenger speech. And then you will perform it for the webcam memorized, because that's your big final skill that we work on in this class. We'll talk about different strategies. The flip test is going to be the big one, where you break the monologue up into sections, which the Greek messenger speech is already broken up into sections. And then if you have someone at home to help you, partner memorization is also really helpful once you get a little bit under your belt. So once you're like 50% memorized, you can give your script to someone else and they can be what we call on book. And then you are calling for line only if you need it and you get stuck. So we'll teach you those strategies and hopefully that'll help you in the future as well. So the template for the messenger speech is your greeting. That's something that grabs the attention of the audience, identifies who you are and who sent you. Then you have 3 trials. Now, these are not like bang the gavel, you're guilty trials. They're obstacles or struggles that the character has to face on their long, long journey on foot. Remember, they're traveling from one country to another, sometimes from very long distances in between. So they go through a lot on the way. So trial 1 is one of the terrible things they had to face along the journey. Trial 2 is a different terrible thing they had to face along the journey. And then trial 3 is a third terrible thing that they had to face along the journey. And somewhere in those 3 trials, they need to have some sort of injury that happens to them. Maybe they trip and fall down a mountain and land in, a pool of piranhas, or maybe they, get zapped by an alien spaceship. So something has to happen along the way. Then they deliver the message they were actually sent to deliver, which, remember, has to be a super important message, something that's very important, not just something silly and trivial, but something that warrants a long, long journey on foot. And then is the death. Now, the death should come out of that injury that you had in one of the trials. We're not just going to have you get hit by a meteor out of the blue with no warning. You're not going to be attacked by a bear that we didn't know about. It needs to be something that happened in the trials. So this is the example that I have written, and I'll perform it for you here in a minute.
Excuse me, sir. I have an urgent message to tell you. My name is Jeremiah the Bullfrog, and I was sent here by Jiminy Cricket. On my way here, I was driving, and a truck full of M&Ms spilled, and it spilled M&Ms everywhere. Oh, they covered my car, and I had to eat my way to get past them. Then I stumbled upon a battle of the Mike and Ikes and the Sour Patch Kids. Oh, and I got wounded in the leg by a Skittle they were shooting. Suddenly, an alien spaceship beamed me up into outer space, and they knocked me out while they tapped into my brain. Oh, I'm not feeling so good. Anyway, the message that Jiminy wanted me to tell you is that Pinocchio was eaten by the blue whale, and he's in grave danger. Oh no, my leg. I don't think I can make it. Oh.
So now you can see why it's so important that the character be someone of low status that's not super important to the rest of the play, because they die at the end. So really have fun with this one. As you can see from the example that I gave you, the original Greek messenger speech would have been super, super serious, but we're kind of playing around with it and having some fun. So make it silly, make it fun, just make it school appropriate. Okay. So that's the assignment. Let me know if you have any questions.